Welcome to Talk 72 podcast, episode 4. I'm here today with Johnny from Chickens on Food podcast. So today we're going to go through a few hot topics in the EFL. We'll start with Hull City, talking about their ownership problems and their embargo. Then we'll move on to Sheffield Wednesday with some big news. We'll then go to Leicester City with their managerial madness. We'll then go to Birmingham with their transfer spree. And then we'll do some predictions and players that will excite in the season. So starting off with Hull City. Johnny, what are your opinions on what's going on down there?
So it looks like I've not paid, I think it's a fee or a loan fee for a player. I can't remember the player off the top of my head, but it's come back and bite them on their ass. And they've now been given a three transfer ban.
Yeah.
So I don't think they can buy players for a while. So it's just carnage there, isn't it, now with it all, and it's their own fault for not paying it.
Yeah, I think it's an absolute mess at the moment. Obviously, we're kind of seeing this more and more often where I think some owners, I don't know if it's a lack of knowledge, but they're spending all this money and, not thinking of, the payments that they have to make. And we're seeing it with different clubs. Obviously, with Michael Wigan, we've seen, the owners spend not specifically on transfers, but on wages and loan moves and having to play these clubs. And the owner has come out with a statement and said Louis Barry and Jaden Philogene were not a problem. But then he also said near to the end of the statement that he believes that Hull City's got £100 million worth of players. What are your opinions on that, Johnny?
It's just bad how it's being run by Hull. They survived last season by goal difference. They nearly ended up in the same league as Bradford, so they got away with it there. And I've been watching videos on YouTube. I think it's HR7s. I think his name is. He's a bit of a Hull fan, and the videos he's showing there is just how the club have yo-yoed over the years.
Yeah,
and I think the owner's I think he's got too greedy. Thought, oh, we'll get these players on cheap, and then they forgot to send, I think, £1 million to them, and it's just crippled the club, and it's gonna cause mayhem now for the next 3 transfer windows.
Exactly, and you seem to have this project going on, but unless they can get this lifted, it might be looking like they might have to sell some of these financial assets, and players like Charlie Hughes, who got sold from Michael Wigan again. He was only bought for about 3.5 to £4 million, I believe, and it's one of those where these type of players, you've got to work out how you're going to facilitate them all, because 100 million I think's possibly too big of a stretch, because I think if you're surviving on the last day, I don't understand how you can generate that from your squad. And obviously, players like Hughes and these young players that they're getting in, they could be worth 10 to 15 million, but with the problems, and if they don't sort it out, it starts to get the point where they're going to have to sell them on the cheap. Is there anyone at Hull City off the top of your head that you think would be, a good signing for Bradford?
I'm trying to think of some Hull players off the top of my head, but it ain't happening. Give me 10 seconds. I'll have to try to have a look at this whole team.
No problem.
I know we had to prepare for this early, didn't we? But it's typical. It's live. So the first team decides to load up. I'm trying to think who played pretty well from last time. If my memory serves me correctly, they had a couple of Liverpool players, didn't they, on loan?
Yeah, they had the likes of Tyler Morton, Fabio Carvalho. I think that was the season before. Yeah, they had a really strong squad, and they had the likes of Liam Delap, and it was one of those where, this owner, I think he's got a previous for making strange decisions. Like, obviously they had quite a good squad, but Liam Rosen, he finished 7th, and with the caliber of the league, then it's not easy to just walk into the playoffs like that. But I think but obviously he's gone to the League One now with Strasbourg, and he's tearing it apart, and potentially getting Europe in there.
It's like I've been looking at the top goal scorers,
and
I think the top goal scorer is Gianno Pedro, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, João Pedro.
I would take him at City if he's going to be free, but it's going to be one of them now at Hull where they're going to be in defence mode.
Yeah.
And with it now, they're going to buckle down the hatches, 3-year ban or 3-year transfer ban.
Yeah.
They'll have to butt their ideas up and probably do what Chelsea had to do, go into the youth setups and stuff like that and get players on the youth setups.
Yeah, I mean, there is a positive to that, obviously, with the academy coming up now. But again, as you've said, they'll be very defensive on the players. However, if anything like this happens again, they could face real problems where the players will be able to walk. It's a strange one because this time last year, Liam Rosenwell was sacked, but they were picking up, likes of Hughes and these types of players that, especially from Turkey, I think, where they could have really pushed on, and they absolutely haven't seemed to do that. Obviously, they've got Ruben Selles, but sacked him. It's what I think it's turning into one of those jobs now where whoever seems to come in gets sacked, but you can only do what you can do with the players. And obviously, Ruben Selles was amazing with Reading. He came to them in a time where they were in a similar situation and took them successfully. And I think he would have done well there, and I think he will absolutely do well at Sheffield United. So moving on, another team that's in financial despair, Sheffield Wednesday, Johnny, and it was announced that in 1 week several players can leave. So I'll throw the same question at you. Is there anyone in that Wednesday squad realistically that you think you'd love to see in League One? Obviously, I think it was something with Josh Windass, was it?
Rumours of Josh Windass. Obviously, Dean Windass used to play for us. It's his son. And by watching Josh Windass on like the EFL highlight show, he's a good player. And if it's the great opportunity now to bring him in, and it's like with all this, with the I think they got 15 days.
Yeah,
it's like Bradford City tweeted out something out the other day where the launching the new kit on Thursday, and it had 3 names, but the one at the bottom, one in the middle, one at the top, and then it had a space at the top. And it said familiar faces.
Yeah.
So it's someone who's probably, hopefully, going to launch the kit, and hopefully it might be either Josh Windass or Naki Wells. But I hope we get Josh Windass from Sheffield because he'd be a fantastic player for Bradford, and we need a goal scorer.
Yeah, I think, obviously Josh Windass was a player that used to be at Wigan, and I think, he was quite a good player, but he just had that bit of an attitude problem. When he came out on that podcast and spoke about that young lad not being good enough, and I think that just explains his character, really. Again, for Bradford, I think he'd be an excellent move up there as bit of a bully of a striker. At Wigan, I'd love to see maybe like Bailey, Chada Terry, who spent the last season on loan at Lincoln, scored 5 goals from August to the end of the season. But I think, a tall young striker. I think he'd work quite well. But you've also got the likes, again, of Josh Windass, Barry Bannon, Nathaniel Chalobah, Jan Valery, Dominic Iorfa, who I'd be a big fan of. I think he's got a lot of experience now, especially in Sky Bet League One and the Championship. Max Lowe, and obviously Pierce Charles. I think there will be a few who they will say, look, we're going to try and sign you on a contract because they'll be very key assets for them. Yeah, Johnny, what are your opinions on Sheffield Wednesday at the moment?
Screwed, really, aren't they?
Absolutely.
They're in free for all. The owner, I don't think, is using it as a toy, and he's had enough of this toy. He can't be bothered paying for it anymore.
Yeah.
But it's causing absolute carnage, and like not paying the players.
Yeah.
I think, is it going to be like, I don't know, 12 to 13 days now? They'll be able to leave.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know about you, Luke, but I couldn't go to work and not get paid.
Absolutely.
They've obviously got bills to pay, water, leggy, council tax, mortgages, cars, whatever they've got. They can't afford it. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's a mass exodus at Sheffield Wednesday, and then they'll just start panicking now, and they'll bring in not loan players, they'll bring in loan players, youth players from youth development, because they can't buy players either. It's a complete mess. And I would love to, like, if we could even get on this podcast next week, a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and just see what in the earth is going on at your club.
Yeah, that is absolutely, with Hull and Sheffield Wednesday getting some of those fans in next week. Obviously, if you're listening and you're one of these fans and you'd like to participate, go on our Twitter at Talk72 and we'll love to have you on. I think, it's just so many EFL clubs now that are coming into these similar situations, and it's just the top of the EFL, How do they keep on finding these owners? How do they keep on, looking at them and thinking, they'll take this club to success? I think absolutely, as you were saying, same with Wigan. I think in the 22-23 season in the Championship on the last day, there was only a certain amount of players that you thought that played in the last game, and quite a lot missed out. And you thought, is that a bit of a character? But what's the point of going to work for free? They need the money nowadays, and obviously these players on big contracts will absolutely be thinking, where's the money? I think it's just, chance theory, to put it into simple terms, is a tool. I think his attitude towards the club is disgraceful. You've got a massive club there with a massive fan base and, real potential. You've got a manager there who has turned down Southampton and, really could take that team to the next level with investment. And it's just an absolute mess in the way that he's running it. And same with Hull City. What are your opinions, as we touched on a bit last week, what are your opinions on the EFL and the way that they're processing these takeovers and the way these foreign owners are coming in and doing it?
I think the EFL, looking at it, the owners is there.
Yeah.
Like the eyes, like obviously doing the checks on the owners is there. But when then they've passed the testing.
Yeah.
It's just like it goes to pot every time. And there's so many clubs. It's like, look at Portsmouth. I think we mentioned it on podcast before. I think it's called Our City, Our Club on Amazon.
Yeah.
Give that a watch. There's also the QPR. It's either 4-year plan or 5-year plan. It's on my YouTube. Just search Chickens on Loose podcast.
Yeah.
And it goes through like how the owners are coming in and they want to change everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes it needs like a football person in that club to tell the owner to stop wrecking the club. It's like with the thing at Sheffield Wednesday. This guy looks like he wants to make a big buck.
Absolutely.
And I think I've read somewhere a couple week or month back, or probably last season at some point, where he was charging kids £40. That's children to come and watch a game, £40.
Unbelievable.
You can get like a ticket at Bradford City. A season ticket for my son has cost me £20 for under 12. 20 quid it's cost for a season ticket. More clubs need to do that. They need to have more. You're building for the future, and there's probably parents in Sheffield now thinking, "Oh, don't go and support Sheffield Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Let's go and support Sheffield United instead." And it's heartbreaking to see in stuff like this with clubs just falling off cliffs all the time.
Absolutely.
And we're going back. Obviously, I know Wigan's been in administration, Bradford have been in administration, but there's teams what have gone into administration. It's took a hell of a long time to come back.
Absolutely.
Like look at Macclesfield, for example.
Yeah.
I know Robbie Savage is no longer there. He's moved to Forest Green to manage them.
Yeah.
But there's teams like that. Teams like Bury, however you want to pronounce it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Teams have gone to the end of the earth and they've just survived, or they've gone out on non-existence. Like Dagenham and Redbridge and stuff like that. Darlington. Big teams have just fallen out of the league due to crappy owners, and it needs sorting.
Absolutely. Again, I think, as you touched on it, with the EFL, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, like you pass the test, but it then just kind of seems that, you know, they're not checking what these owners are doing. I think they need to be checking nowadays what money's coming in and what is going out, because, you know, these owners could be in for however many years, but same with, obviously, touch is massive, but the Glazer at Man United, you know, it just seems like football nowadays. These owners are just coming for a bit of fun. They're coming to chuck a little bit of money, and you know, and some, for example, like Chansiri, just trying to make a big buck out of it, and it's disgusting, really. Like, as you touched on, £40 for a child's ticket. You know, what good is that in bringing the next generation into the clubs? It's disgusting, and I think obviously we touched on in a different podcast. Ticket prices, you know, £20 for an adult to go, and you know, maximum of £5-10, maybe £5 a game for, you know, for students and children. It's, you know, that should be more than enough. And you know, if Sheffield Wednesday get 25,000, you know, it's still making a lot of money. And you know, football is it's fans. You know, it's some fans' lives, but if that's getting taken away, it's absolutely terrible. Now, moving on in the podcast, we've got some big news at Leicester City with their manager appointment in their attempt to bounce back from the Premier League. Obviously, you know, they've had a bit of financial problems here and there with FFP. So, Johnny, the three of the big managers that I talked about are Gary O'Neill, Sean Dyche, and Chris Wilder. So first, we'll talk about Gary O'Neill, who seems like the stronger favourite. Do you think he'd be a good appointment?
It's hard to say. On them three managers you just mentioned there, you never know. Wilder could go in, could smash it. The other manager there who used to be, I think, Wolves manager.
Gary O'Neill, yeah.
Yeah, Gary O'Neill, it's one of them. You never know until they get there. It's hard to say on it all, but Leicester need a manager, and Leicester, they've been struggling. I know I mentioned it earlier about financial fair play or whatever it was.
Yeah.
They're possibly going to get, like, I think, penalty points. Don't know how much, because they've did it in the past. They tried to get away with it in the Premier League. I think the EFL have just been waiting for them nicely to get relegated to deal with them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And whoever does take charge of that team will probably have to deal with, obviously, minus points. So I think it's going to be really difficult from setting off, and you never know what might happen. They might, on one hand, they might boss it and smash them penalty points out at window and come back to it and climb up the league, or it could go the opposite way. They could lose the first 3 or 4 games and just do not recover from it.
Yeah, I think Gary O'Neill is, you know, he's kind of proved himself a little bit in the Premier League, but Sean Dyche has obviously taken Burnley into the Premier League and really done successful there. And Chris Wilder obviously just coming off the back of a playoff final, which I personally think, they should have gone on to win, especially when you 1-0 up, and mistake from Kiefer Moore has cost them promotion. I think it's not going to be easy because with FFP, they've also got to watch out in the Championship because they've got the rules there. With the likes of Vardy leaving as well, I think it could really turn against them as a club. I don't think it's going to be an easy appointment. And I think, with the likes of Gary O'Neill and Sean Dyche, they'll want spending, but obviously but I also think the likes of, the Sean Dyche way of playing, Leicester City in the Championship, I think should be, a fast attacking, direct possession football team. And I think it's a hard one to call, really. Well, what are your opinions on Chris Wilder as a manager, obviously just losing out with Sheffield United?
It's like I always listen to Talk Sport while I'm at work. And they've been on about Chris Wilder and the reason why he left Sheffield when Sheffield United was with all the AI analysts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
By all accounts, he wanted to do it the old-fashioned way, but then the new owners wanted AI to come in. So with him leaving there, it's a tricky one because he's been at a few clubs off top of my head. I think he's been. Has he been did he go Watford at one point? Watford or Middlesbrough?
Definitely, I think he's been to Middlesbrough and it might have been Norwich, I think, or Watford. It might have been Watford, I think. Yeah,
and
he's been a good few.
He did crap there, didn't he? Really at Watford, but you know what Watford are like and sacking the managers.
Absolutely, ridiculous.
Like any of them, really. Like saying, give them a guy a chance. He might do well. He might not do well at Leicester. You never know.
Yeah, I think it's just a really tough one to call with Leicester City because, it's never easy coming in on a minus points deduction and, having to just click like that and get the squad straight away because, again, losing Vardy and Patson Deck, I think the striker problem there could become a little bit of an issue. I think they've got a few good players like Casey McAteer. It's a horrible one to predict. And next is the new boys in the Championship. We touched them on a few of our podcasts. Birmingham City. Now, they had a ridiculous week last week with Beadle, Doyle, Fujimoto, Kyogo, and Damari Gray. Now, Johnny, these types of signings, for Championship are a very high caliber. Now, what are your opinions on Birmingham? Obviously, they're spending big, but do you reckon there could be a little issue there of potentially bonding these players?
Yeah, it's like the throwing manure at the wall, and hoping it sticks. What every club does when they get promoted, they throw money at the wall, hopefully it sticks, and they just throw money about. And with them doing that, they're bringing in players like that Gray, for example, who used to play for them. So they've gone back to like an X to bring him in, but he's experienced. And throwing money at the wall in the Championship is either going to go two ways, like we've said previously.
Absolutely.
You're either going to do well or you're not going to do well. And like there's also another club in who's gone to the Championship, Wrexham. Same again, throwing money at the wall. You never know what's going to happen. And we could be in this podcast in 3 months' time and Burnham are smashing it, or they're in relegation zone already.
Yeah.
Just keep what they're doing, really. Throw money at the wall, get rid of players who they don't need.
And
just see what happens.
Exactly. I think Birmingham and Wrexham, like with Birmingham, I think, it's good when you get promoted, bringing in player after player after player, but they've got to have time to gel. And I think, I've seen a few comparisons with them compared to the Ipswich side that got back-to-back promotion, but what we saw with Ipswich was that team in League One didn't even finish first, but they were very strong, bonded together. And I think that's what you need in the club. Obviously, they will keep quite a few League One players like Clara, Alex Cochran, Ethan Laird, Iwata, Pike, Stansfield, these players. But I think, you just think, will there be a few strong characters in there that could, if it does go to crap early on, could it turn on them? Obviously, touching on promotion clubs, we've seen all of them really, I think, spending good amounts of money. Like Bradford, for example, and Port Vale and Doncaster all bringing in these types of players. And, are you impressed with Bradford's window?
Yes, at the minute I am. I'm just going to get the names up.
And also, what would you rate it? And then how could you rate it up to like a better level? What would you looking to sign? Obviously, we've talked previously about the likes of the striker situation.
So as it stands at the minute, Bradford have bought. These are all free transfers. They've not spent a penny. They brought in Stephen Humphries from Barnsley, Josh Nutville from AFC Wimbledon, Joe Wright from Kilmarnock, Matthew Pennington from Blackpool, Ibo Torre from Stockport, Curtis Tilt from Salford, Will Swan from Crawley, and Max Power. He's without a club. Bradford needs to put the owner said he needs to put his hand in his pocket and bring in decent players. Yeah. Because we want to be a League One team. Yeah. Possibly Championship team or one day Premier League. The owner said, like at the fans forum, he's made mistakes in the past. He doesn't want like another owner to come in, or he don't want any help from anyone. He wants to do it on his own. And he's showing real intent now, bringing these players in. It's like Stephen Humphries from Barnsley. Rumours are Barnsley tried to offer him a deal. He rejected it. Bradford have come in and fought off competition from other EFL teams. Yeah. So the money is there, but the owner, like personally now we need to bring in a striker, possibly another left back, midfielder, and a striker. Yeah. Rumours are Nike Wells, Josh Windass. So I'm just going to hopefully see what happens there. Like goalkeepers, we're fine with goalkeepers. Defenders, we don't really need any more centre backs. We've got loads of them already. Yeah. We just need to, I think, bring in a couple like a midfielder / attacking midfielder and a striker, and we should be sorted for the rest of the league. Well, for the rest of the season.
So, what would you rate your window out of 10 so far?
I would say 8 out of 10.
8. And so to get to a 9 out of 10, you're thinking about that attacking midfield and striker. And you're going into a few of those names again. You're Stephen Humphries, Max. There's a lot of League One experience and quite a bit of Championship experience in that team. I think Bradford could really push next season. I think they could catch the league by surprise. I think if these players can gel, obviously I know Stephen Humphries is quite a big character. He's got a previous little bit with Barnsley and a little bit with Wigan when he's coming to the end of his contract, and he seems to be a bit an attitude problem. But again, I think with an experienced striker like Windass and Naki Wells and a good 10 attacking midfielder, I think they could really do well. I think out of the 4 promoted clubs, I definitely believe they've had the best window by a mile. And I think, he is showing intent because, even though these players are on freeze, the wages, I don't think will be specifically on the cheap side. So moving on, obviously we know that Wigan had Chorley on Saturday, and was it Bradford had FC United? Was that on the Saturday as well?
Yes, that was a 3:00 kickoff.
So in that Bradford side, again the 3:00 kickoff, it's FC United. Was there any players that really excited you that you saw in the side?
Humphries, he took on 5 players.
Yeah.
And then he got took out in penalty box. Should have been a penalty. We had the lone player as well. I need to get his name up because I forgot it off the top of my head. Where is it? Because I did a video of his goal. Which if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is from Exeter, and I think he's a left wing back. He ended up scoring, and it was a fairly good goal. Josh came down the wing.
Yeah,
I've got the video on YouTube if anyone wants to see it. Chickens Not Loose. He's come down the wing. Josh has done fantastic, and he's just crossed the ball in. Whoever was here missed it, and then Whitchuk behind him just tapped it in. It was a good goal, and the team played very well.
Yeah.
We had obviously rolling, I think, a couple of subs, brand new half. Hilton, we saw him in the first half. Bradford, good goalkeeper.
Yeah.
We had a couple other trialists, and I need to find them because I forgot to save it. I did have it saved on my PC, but then my PC decided to have a mess about. So the other trialist we had was Jack Hunt from Bristol Rovers, and Tyler McGaw, who was a left winger, and then we had the other player I mentioned earlier who we played for Exeter.
Yeah. Yeah. Wigan obviously had Chorley, and we were 1-0 down at half time, but we were creating good chances. And overall, I'd say I'm very impressed. We played Chorley last year, and with Sean Maloney, it was a 0-0, but you came out with it thinking, against the National League North side, we need to be creating a lot more chances. We had a very young squad because we didn't have as many players and no strikers. But I think this year we got Sadie, Mullin, and Costello, and Mullin showed the experience. Should have got a goal or two. But Dara Costello, who we've bought, I believe, from, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head.
That's who used to play for Bradford.
Yeah.
Couldn't it a barn door saved his life at Bradford?
I know, absolutely. Yeah, Dara Costello, who we bought from Burnley, 300k apparently, and one of the goals, it was 1-2 Sadie. Sadie laid him off. He's that build-up striker, and it was a top finish. I think. I think. I never like to be, too optimistic with Wigan because it can always come out to bite you. But I think this season we could really push on. I think, maybe with the odd player here and there. We got Callum Wright from Plymouth, who Plymouth fans have said in the Championship were awful, but in the League One he had a few impressive years. I think. I think it could be quite a successful team. So who have Bradford got next in the friendlies?
The team you just mentioned, Chorley. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm going there Friday straight after work, 7:30 kickoff. And it's I think the day before, or the game before we go to Austria. I'm not going to Austria, but it's the game before Austria. But on the Tuesday, 15th, we've got Pickering Town, I think it is. So I'm looking forward to both of them games. Chorley, I think he's just going to be same again, mess about with the team, probably a different goalkeeper, and just see what happens. Hopefully, touch wood, we have either Nike Wells or Josh Windass in the team, or a prolific striker starting the game. Because I know we've touched on it before, but with Andy Cook injured, we've got Cal Cav left, Swan, and probably Smith left. We did get rid of big wage owners of the Dame Oliver, Smallwood, and a few other players left who were on high wages. So hopefully it frees up a couple of wages for a decent striker.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it's like to say shout out to Chorley, a very impressively run non-league club. We can touch on them in a different podcast, but if you're a fan and you're playing against one of the teams from around the area, go to Chorley. We've got a great setup, as showed when we played them on Saturday. Right, Johnny. Next part of the podcast, I'd like one bold prediction in League One for the 25-26 season.
One bold prediction. From League One. Let's go get the league table up. One bold prediction. I think Cardiff City will possibly get relegated again due to the manager who they've got. And when I looked at the stats, obviously we've done it on a podcast. I think he managed Rochdale and Man City like development team, and he's just gone to Cardiff. I've been watching the Class of '92 documentary on Salford, and they did the same. They got like an under-21 manager from Manchester United, and it didn't work out well for them. So I think it's going to be the same fate as him, really. And when I did a TikTok a couple of weeks back, I can't remember his name, but we had a Rochdale fan come in, and he said the manager who was a Rochdale manager before he went to Man City was crap. He panicked and struggled. So I think he's going to probably struggle again. So a prediction, Cardiff City, back-to-back relegation.
Yeah. So touching on that, I think, Cardiff and Plymouth, I think they're two different things, because I think, again, this manager, not highly rated by Rochdale, and I think, you can say, you like young managers, but obviously Tom Cleverley has had experience with Watford, and obviously we know what their manager problem is, but he did an all right job there, and I think he'll do really well with Plymouth. But the young manager that Cardiff have got, inexperienced, but they can bring him in, but I don't believe Cardiff are going to spend chuck a lot at it. And I think if you're a young manager and you want these type of players in, they could get a lone player that might help them a bit. But I think this young manager, I don't think he'll hit the ground running. I think they'll definitely struggle. What about Championship? What's your bold prediction for the Championship?
Get the league table up again while I'm here.
How about
Championship? Right, I got Championship. I think Sheffield Wednesday are probably going to get relegated.
Yeah.
They're struggling. Obviously, we've just been discussing about that. So I think they're going to get relegated there. And possibly Watford. Watford always seem to struggle every year.
Yeah.
So probably them two will go down, and I can't think of a third team to go down at the minute.
Finally, what about League Two? Obviously, you saw the majority of the teams then next season. What do you think could happen in that league? Either
so
the league or
when we was on about throwing money at the wall earlier, MK Dons have thrown a hell of a lot of the money at the wall.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always buy you success.
Yeah.
Like it always goes, it either goes two ways. Like look at Carlisle last season bringing in like 25 players.
Yeah,
and they got relegated.
Absolutely.
So League Two possibly going down. I would probably say Crawley will go down. Possibly Barnet. Yeah, I would probably say Barnet and Crawley both going down this year from that league.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some great predictions in there, and I agree. I agree with most of them. I think Wrexham might struggle in the Championship. I think, we're on about the big money, but we haven't seen. We've seen Ryan Hardy come up, but is Ryan Hardy the type of player that helps you get mid-table? I'm not too confident on. I think they've not. If you looked at that League One squad, they were scraping a lot of wins. And whether you can do that in the Championship, it's a different matter. It's a lot more fast-paced, technical, quick, skillful. I think Wrexham might struggle next season. What about promotion-wise? Out of the Championship, League One and League Two, who do you think could really... Obviously, I think Bradford and possibly my team, Wigan, could have. But what about a team that's been underappreciated that you think could do really well in any of the leagues?
Championship. Ooh. It's like I think Wrexham, they probably won't go up this year.
No.
If they do, it'd be a miracle.
Yeah.
But it's hard. There's a few teams I think would go up. There's like
in the league, yeah.
Ipswich, for example, might come back up. I don't know. It might Hull. I think Hull might surprise. Hull might surprise from there. Yeah, if he sorts the stuff out, they might. Then from League One, I think possibly Bradford. That's just been a Bradford fan, but hopefully they go up.
Yeah.
Or Wigan, your team. But I think Leyton Orient would do well there.
Yeah, obviously touching on Leyton Orient, I think Aaron Connolly. I think a lot of Middlesbrough fans I saw Leyton Orient posting was saying about him, but he has shown some glimpses before in the Premier League. He scored a good few goals, and I think he dropped down to League One. He could become very successful, and I think he could have a season like Charlie Coleman. Obviously, if he's on reasonable wages, I think a 2-year contract there is excellent. Obviously, if he does really well, they might look to try and extend it, or they might cash in. I think, it's a great one later. Obviously, keeping Richie Wellens, and I think Aaron Connolly in that system as the Charlie Coleman type player could be an excellent recruitment from them. What do you think about League Two?
Oh, League Two.
Very tough one to predict.
League Two, it's like it took Bradford 6 years to get out of this league.
Oh, yeah.
But there's like Barnet and stuff like that. I think they're going to do well.
Yeah.
Bristol Rovers will probably go back up. I'd probably say Cambridge, Cheltenham, and I think Chesterfield are going to be a bit of underdogs. I think they'll do well.
Yeah, they've picked up some great players so far.
And probably MK Dons, like saying earlier, throwing crap at the wall, eventually it sticks. It might be their time. Seeing MK Dons in League One might be this year.
Yeah, it's some of those teams like Wrexham, MK, Barnet. Maybe a team like Cardiff. It could work out if Cardiff can chuck a bit, but I think it's weird. As I say, chucking everything can go two ways. Now, moving on to one of the final things in the podcast. Throw you on the spot a bit, past, present. Your Bradford City Mount Rushmore. So 4 players that you, in like a Hall of Fame, 4 players for a Mount Rushmore.
Naki Wells. Oh my God. What's his name? Used to manage Stuart McCall. Andy Cook. And I would probably say, oh my Lord. Trying to think of some players I've seen at Bradford in my time. Hanson. They're all fantastic players. What about yourself?
I think for Wigan, obviously in my time, I've been watching them since about 3 or 4, so in 2011, 2012, just in the Premier League. So Reece James has got to be there. I think he's only, it tells you something when the Wigan fans were, can't stop talking about him when he was only on loan for a season. It was an unbelievable loan move with him. I think we were lucky to get him. Just, he's probably the best player that I've arguably seen. I think Will Grigg could be on there as another present one. I think he was, there's a reason why he got nominated in the Player of the Year, the Ballon d'Or rankings, as is getting captain in the Euros in 2016. I think from what I've heard from my parents, from my grandparents, I think he likes a Nathan Ellington has got to be up there for unbelievable player in the Championship and the Premier League. But I think finally enough, bit of a surprise, I think. FA Cup winning manager Roberto Martinez for what he did, but to replace Martinez, I'd either probably go for like some Cal McManaman, coming back, Sean Maloney, or bit of a bold shot, Ben Watson, because of his FA Cup winner. Next, to put you on a bit of spot again, forget Bradford City Mount Rushmore. What about your general EFL Mount Rushmore for the players?
I would probably say Rory Delap when he was at Stoke. His throw-ins.
Absolute great shot.
JJ Kocher, did he play in EFL?
Bolt, I think he might have been.
Oh, that Premier League.
Yeah. I think point on a bit like, I could agree with Rory Delap. I think a player like, obviously, done a post if you go on the Twitter of some of the legends. I think George Friend, just solely because the amount of times he's played. Maybe a player like Ross McCormack for all the clubs. It's a tough one. I think there's a lot of players to pick. Peter Whittingham at Cardiff is another one up there. What's one player that, in your time of, even in any of the leagues in the EFL, what's one player that you think like is a bit of a rogue shout, a bit of a special player that, we haven't really seen much like in previous years?
I would probably say at Bradford.
Yeah.
Bobby Poynton. He's a really, really, really good player. Dime in the rough. Because with Bradford City, normally what happens is if you're good or ace, you get a move to Premier League. You get moved to Brighton, stuff like that, Forest. Because Bradford like to get rid of players from the youth development and send them up to the Premier League or higher up the pyramid.
Yeah.
But Bobby Poynton, some miracle, somehow, don't know how he's done it. He's come through all from the youth development and not been picked up by a Premier League team. And he's at Bradford and he's a proper diamond geezer.
So do you reckon in League One next season he could really, set League One on fire?
Yeah, he could. He just needs to get a bit more confident and bulk up a little bit, but he's a really good player. He's scored important goals for us.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time where I think the manager, Graham Alexander, wouldn't pick him, and the fans like, pick Bobby, bring on Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby, I think he scored screamers. He scored really good goals. And it's like Bobby Poynton's one of our own. He's a very good player. And I think this season's going to make him. So save this podcast. Bobby Poynton is probably going to do really well in League One football.
We'll make sure we clip that. So we're talking about Graham Alexander. What are the pros and cons of his management? Because I think he's come up, and I think Bradford fans are quite optimistic about what he'll do. I think he's a good manager. What have you seen from him that you really like, and maybe stuff that you don't like?
So on my podcast, Chickens on the Loose podcast, I actually said we went on like a 6-game losing streak. We couldn't win for Jack, and I wanted him out. That was truthfully, he were dire, or annoyed, or angry. But what a difference a season or a couple of games make. Yeah, and he's got his mark on this club now. Pros are, it's like I've been watching the Class of '92 documentary. Yeah, and there's if no one's watched it, find it on Sky Sports or Sky Go, wherever you watch your stuff, to search Class of '92. I think it's series 3 comes in, possibly 2. And just seeing him in the dressing room, shouting at players, telling them what they've done wrong. Yeah. And people learn from their mistakes, I think, from him. Yeah. But his cons are substitutes. He normally waits until about the 75th, 80th minute to do a sub, sometimes even 85 minutes. Yeah. And in the stands, you're like when we've been losing or stuff like that. It's like when we were 2-0 up against Swindon. Yeah. And Smallwood came in with a slide tackle. And Smallwood did these tackles 99% of the time, and the referee just decided to send him off, and we don't think it was sending off. But then I think he brought on another defender.
Yeah.
And it didn't go right. It didn't go well. And obviously, I think we lost 5-4. I think it was off the top of my head. It's just substitutes he does. But I think when you fall out with him, it's like horrible to fall out with him. You get like exiled from club. There's like a few players who went walkabouts last season. I think got locked in a cupboard somewhere. I think Adwa, a couple of other players must have fallen out of him because nowhere near a team or you get loaned out somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think he's a patient manager. But as soon as you piss him off, that's it. You're gone.
Yeah, I think so. Finally, well, second to finally, I've got the first Bradford 5 league games of the season, and I'll also include EFL Cup. So Wickham at home, Northampton away, Blackburn away in the Cup, Luton at home, Stockport away, and Peterborough away. What are your predictions right now? We'll do it again in obviously close to the season, but what are your early predictions for those games results-wise?
So Wickham, I think
Wickham
we're gonna. Yeah, Wickham, I think we're gonna win.
Then Northampton
can't tell
away.
you it's. Yeah, Northampton away. I think we'll probably win that. Luton.
What about Bradford in the Cup? No, sorry.
Sorry, Blackburn in the Cup. You never know on the day, but personally, I would like a win. But I could probably see a loss in that. But if Bradford step up, we'll probably win that. I think we'll struggle against Luton. We'll probably draw against Luton or even lose against Luton. I think we could easily beat Stockport and Peterborough and then AFC Wimbledon as well. We just need to book our ideas up really and start the season well.
Yeah, my team, Wigan, have got Northampton at home, Leyton Orient away, Notts County at home in the Cup, Peterborough at home, Luton away, and Rotherham away. With Northampton, I think, start off strong, 3-0 win. The Leyton Orient, I think, it's the type of game which we always draw. You know, I think we had 2 0-0s or a 1-1 and a 0-0 in the last 2 years, but I think that game will start off with 2 solid wins. Notts County at home in the Cup, I think we'll definitely get a win from that. Peterborough at home, another win. We always seem to win there. Luton away, I think, being optimistic, I think it's going to be very tough. We did win there in the Championship, but I think either a solid draw, possibly scraping something out, a win out of that. And Rotherham, I think maybe again similar to Luton. I think we'll have a good start to this season. We'll have a really good start. So finally in the podcast, Johnny, let's go for right now. What are your we'll go for Bradford first, and then all the EFL leagues and the EFL. Bradford City, what is your top 3 signings from third to first so far this summer?
I would say Josh from AFC Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Good player. And also, so I put his goal up on Twitter the other day from the game, and his mum commented.
Excellent.
His mum's pretty ace on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then somebody asked a question about his boots. And Jackie, his mum, said, that's a good podcast question. So I ended up asking him on Instagram, and he responded to it, just saying he ripped his boots. So he's with me so far, he's doing all right. Second, Stephen Humphries. Obviously, seeing him take on 5 defenders from FC United and nearly scoring. And then I would probably say Max Power.
Former Wigan player.
He's obviously former Wigan, and for being the person who used to watch the Jeff Stelling era of Gillette Soccer Saturday, his name always used to get brought up.
Yeah.
So it always seems like a good fit there. And I've got a question to ask you in a bit. Anyway, I'm going to put you on spot in a minute.
Perfect. Yeah, Max Power. He always goals and assists wise. He's always been a top player in this league. You had to see in the Championship, and then so with Sunderland done a decent as well. Top three so far from what I saw in the game. Third, probably Mullin. Show very glimpses of hope. I think he'll never lose that bit of goal scoring ability. Second, Sadie. I think his hold up play. I think Portsmouth fans are right. I think he could be all right with two up front in the formation that we play in, but we could possibly put him as a 10 or maybe swap, a bit of change with Callum Ryan playing on 9 or 10 would be excellent. And first, Dara Costello, in the 45 minutes he played, I thought he was absolutely excellent. His pace, his ability to drive, his finishing, and his scanning is all a quality player. Now, off the top of your head, Johnny, EFL top 3 transfers.
I would say Gray back to Burnham.
Yeah, number 3.
I would say Mullins to Wigan. And then I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's joined MK Don's striker. I think he came from Bolton.
Aaron Collins.
That's him. What about yourself?
I think third. I think maybe Humphreys. I just think for League One, he's an excellent player. I think he'll do really well for Bradford as kind of a bit of a bully, a bit of an S house, as they say. A bit of a good finishing ability, power behind him, speed, dribbling. Second, I'd like to say. I don't want to touch too much on Boom because I'll save it for first, but I'll go for. I can't remember the name off the top of his head, but the lad that's just signed for Norwich, because I've seen clips. Obviously, he's not played them yet, but he's just signed for them, and I think his stats don't lie. He's an excellent talent. Let's just get his name up here. Matthias Kvitsgarden. I think he's going to do very well for them. And firstly, Kyogo to Birmingham. I think he scored something like 80 goals in 120, 30 games for Celtic, apparently, from what I've seen. And he's just going to set the championship on fire. Finally, the question you wanted to ask me and put me on the spot was?
So, I'm going to leave it on a cliffhanger. Okay. And I'm going to ask you the question, but you get a bonus point, but also I'll put it out to social media without using Google.
Okay.
Who is the longest serving manager in the EFL? And the bonus point is the name, the club, and how long they've managed the club for.
I won't guess it because I want it to be a cliffhanger for the. I had literally before when I was doing my research, saw a post. I cannot remember his name, but I do remember the club. Excellent, and I'll also put a question out there. Oh, I'll go for. Let's go for I want one signing that will set the leagues on fire, and I want one signing that is being hyped up massively and will be a flop. So that's it for episode 4 of the Talk 72 podcast. Thanks all for watching. Obviously, keep update. We're starting to try and get more on the TikTok nowadays, potentially starting Instagram, but the Twitter is where it's all at the moment. Constant daily post, transfer updates. We're currently doing a championship home kit versus. So we've done Ipswich versus Norwich and in a poll, Birmingham versus West Brom. I think I uploaded Which one was it now? Blackburn versus Preston. So get involved in that. Give us any questions that you'd like to be asked on the podcast, any topics you'd like to be picked up on. If anyone from Sheffield Wednesday or Hull wants to come on, or anyone feels like they'd benefit and we'd benefit from them being on, go on Twitter, drop us a DM, TikTok, YouTube, anything. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for the next podcast. Bye-bye.